Hello and welcome back to Football League World TV. It's time for the weekend preview. International break is obviously here. There's still plenty of EFL football to get through. We've got a few League One games and plenty in League Two to discuss. I'm your host, George Dagless, for this week's weekend preview. I'm joined by George Harbey and Billy Mulley. George, how are you getting on?
Very well, thank you, Dags. Nice to see you. Glad the international break is, the transfer window is over. A bit busy, but yeah, all good, thank you.
Good. Billy, how are you getting on?
Yeah, all good, thank you. Looking forward to getting out and then going to football again this week.
Yeah, I mean, we'll get to the game you're going to later on in the show. But first of all, we're going to focus on League One. And we start with Cheltenham against MK Dons. An interesting game between, obviously, Cheltenham in League One for the first time in a few years. And MK Dons have obviously had a fairly interesting start as well. Scored plenty of goals, but conceded quite a few as well. And that's the first point we get to in this preview. Cheltenham have actually got the second worst defence, in League One so far this year in the opening stages. MK Dons have got the best attack. George, come to you first of all. Is that dynamic going to be what decides this particular game this weekend?
Yeah, I think so. I think when you've got strikers scoring goals, like we'll touch on Mo Easter in a minute, and players like MK Dons have got going forward, it's always going to be a tough ask for Cheltenham. We've just come up from League Two. I like MK Dons a lot. I think they've recovered fairly well from the departure of obviously Russell Martin. And I think Manning's come in and done an all right job, and obviously, as I said, they bought some good players over the course of the summer. East is a great player, Scott Twine as well. So, they've started firing all cylinders, and I think it might be a tough ask for Cheltenham this weekend to keep them out, but I have to wait and see.
Now, a lot of the games MK Dons have been involved in have been quite entertaining. As I mentioned, top scorers in League One, but they've also conceded 8 goals, which is actually only one less than what Cheltenham conceded. So, do you think, Billy, that Cheltenham can take a little bit of heart from that going into this one?
Yeah, definitely. We've mentioned a lot already that both teams are involved in a lot of goals, so that's us already hinting towards the 0-0. But I think with Cheltenham, they've come up with confidence. They've strengthened in certain positions, but they haven't made too many changes to the team that done so well last year. And they're a tough opposition. The 2 games that have actually been beaten have been through late goals, and they've played some decent teams already. So I'm expecting Cheltenham to be stiff opposition for MK Dons, but I'm also expecting MK Dons to come out firing with that brilliant attack they've got.
I mean, one player that obviously left Cheltenham in the summer towards the end of the window was defender Ben Tozer. He's ended up at Wrexham, who have obviously been very ambitious in the market in the National League. George, what do you make of this move, Tozer's exit, and how big a miss do you think he could be for Cheltenham this season?
Yeah, I think it'll be a big miss. I mean, he's been immense for them for the last 3 years, but the last 2 years, obviously, they got to the semis and the playoffs, and then last season he took them up automatically. Yeah, he's a nuisance. I mean, I watched him against Notts the other night, and I think he must have had about 50 throw-ins. He has a massive long throw, 50 throw-ins in about 5 minutes. But Wrexham paid about 200 grand for him, I think the report said, which shows just how highly thought of he is. And I think his departure may have probably come too late in the window for Cheltenham, because they didn't really manage to spend too much of that money. So maybe it's a case of waiting until January. But obviously, it's a big miss for them. And he was a real rock from at the back, and obviously going forward as well, we had his perks. But first and foremost, he's a defender, and he provided a lot of steel at the back. So it'll be a big miss, and hopefully other players step in for him and do a job for him in his absence.
Now, obviously, on the other side, MK Dons, one particular threat they're going to have is Mo Easter. Billy, what have you made of him so far for MK Dons? He looks more at home there than he perhaps did at Peterborough, and obviously a former Cheltenham player as well. So do you think he could potentially haunt his former side this weekend?
Yeah, definitely. He was a player that I was quite shocked with when he left the Championship. I thought he's deserving of a chance in the second tier, but he's come to MK Dons in a team that will consistently create chances for him, and so far he's got 3 and 5, I think. So it's a brilliant start for him. I think that will continue. I can't see him. Well, I can see him going on to proceed to score 20 goals this season. He's one of those players that he will be a consistent nuisance, and he's definitely going to be rewarded with this move.
Okay, yeah, okay. George, how do you see this one going? Cheltenham v MK Dons?
As I said, we've already hinted at 0-0 now. No, I can see there being goals. I think MK Dons look a decent side. I'm going to go over 2-1 MK Dons win on the road.
Okay. I'm going to go 3-2 MK Dons. Billy, how do you see this one go?
I'm going to go 3-2 as well, I think. Yeah, but as we've said, there's going to be goals, and I hope that 0-0 doesn't come into real life.
Yeah, we will see what happens. Expect entertainment, at least from our perspective, when Cheltenham take on MK Dons this weekend. Let's move over to another game in League One. And it's AFC Wimbledon against Oxford United that we're going to look at now. Wimbledon 15th in the league at the moment, having drawn 3 of their first 5. Oxford sitting in 3rd place. They've won 3, drawn 1 and lost 1. I don't think necessarily, though, there's reason for Wimbledon to not feel too confident about getting a result here, George. They play some nice stuff, and they'll be right up for trying to cause maybe a little bit of an upset on paper if you look at what happened last season with the 2 teams. But I think they'll be more than confident about getting something out of this game.
Well, exactly, yeah. That's one thing I like about Wimbledon. I think you touched on the London show, actually. They never go to places and look to just part of the bush. They like to go out and play their football, which is fairly attacking and quite expansive. Obviously, the draw at Ipswich last time out shows they're not afraid to go and go to the big boys and sit back. And it also shows that they've got camaraderie, because I think Ipswich went 2-0 quite in quick succession. And Wimbledon obviously came back and got that draw. So there's clearly a real sense of unity and togetherness in that squad. So, back at home with fans in, anything's possible at home with fans back in the 12th man, as they say. So it'll be a tough test, obviously, because Oxford are a good team. But, you can't really rule Wimbledon out, given their fight back at Ipswich and, the camaraderie they've got in the place.
Plough Lane is going to be bouncing for this one. Obviously, Carl Robinson's in the away dugout. We know the sort of history that he has with AFC Wimbledon, and obviously his MK Dons manager as well in the past. Billy, what sort of reception are you expecting the Oxford manager to potentially get from the home supporters this weekend?
Not a warm one. I think we can all be confident of that. But he'll be used to it by now. Travelling to Wimbledon as MK Dons manager, and ever since he's left, it's all been the same. But yeah, that won't impact him too much, and he'll set up his Oxford team very well, and I'm pretty sure that won't get to him.
Yep, we will see what happens. I'm going to go for 1-1 draw in this particular game. George, how do you see this one go?
Well, I backed up Oxford on my value tip earlier, so I can't go back on my boys. So I'm going to go with 2-0.
Okay. Billy, what's your prediction?
A scrappy 1-0, I think. Oxford's way, sorry.
Okay, glad you mentioned which team we're going to be getting that. All right, brilliant. That rounds up the preview section for League One. Let's drop into League Two for a few games. We'll kick off with Bradford against Walsall. Obviously, Bradford lost last time out to Leighton Orient, and Walsall got their first win on the board in the league, which is obviously good for Matt Taylor and co. George, what have you made of Bradford's start so far? They've been largely impressive under Derek Adams, but did have that little slip up last time out. They are odds on this weekend going into this match. Do you expect them to bounce back at Valley Parade?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I've been impressed by the way they've started. To be fair, I thought that they might have started a bit slow because new manager coming in, new players, like quite a big overhaul. So it normally takes teams time to gel, as we've seen like Ipswich in League One. No, really impressed with Bradford. They came to Forest in the Carabao Cup, and they, as I said, played their stuff really well. Good going forward. Obviously, got a lot of attacking threat. I think Angol has been injured of late, but Andy Cook really stepped up to the plate, and they've got goals out wide in Vernham, Gilead. We said on last week's previous show when they went to before they went to Orient that they performed really well at Mansfield. So there's a lot of similarities there I see in that Morecambe team as well that Adams took up. They've got the target man up top in Cook, and they had Stockton last year. Got some good players out wide, obviously Morecambe and Mendes Gomez, and they're playing largely similar formations. So I think they're a good team, and I think at home as well, they must have 17,000 every week with the amount of seeing ticket holders they have. So you'd back them to beat anyone at Valley Parade, really, and I think that will be the case this weekend.
Having said that, obviously Walsall are now up and running. Got their first win on the board last weekend. Billy, they've got to take some positives from that, of course. And do you give them a shot of perhaps causing a little bit of an upset here this weekend?
Yeah, there's definitely scope for some sort of upset, but I think with Bradford, as we've just said there, they've started very strong. I honestly think the game against Leyton Orient was more of a blip than a sign of things to come. Derek Adams has been a serial winner of promotions in the fourth tier. Walsall, though, it was not just a scrappy 1-0 win. It was a 1-0 win where they scored early doors and they defended that lead really well against the Stevenage side, who quite a lot of people have tipped to do quite well this season. So we take a lot of confidence from that. But at the same time, I think Bradford, there's a lot to be positive about, and I can't see much else than a Bradford win.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm going to go for a Bradford home win. I'm going to go 2-0 to the Bantams. Billy, I'm guessing you're going to agree there.
Yeah, I'll go with the same 2-0 as well.
Okay, and George?
Let's make a hat-trick. I'll go 2-0 as well.
Okay, that's a hat-trick of 2-0 there for Bradford. So we'll see if we're right with that one. We should just mention as well, Andy Cook won Football League World's Fans Player of the Month award for August. Obviously a great start to the season for him and thoroughly deserved. Let's move on to our next League 2 game. And up next, it's Exeter against Forest Green, 11th v 1st. Potentially, George, a good chance for Exeter to get their campaign rolling a little bit more. They've had a steady, at best, start, I think you'd say. But, Forest Green come into this on the back of perhaps a little bit of a shock defeat against Port Vale last weekend. So a good opportunity, maybe you'd say, for the Grecians.
Yeah, obviously Forest Green will want a response first and foremost after that defeat, but they're tipped to be one of the favourites for promotion along with Exeter. So you wonder what that could do for Exeter's confidence if they do beat Forest Green this weekend. If I remember rightly, I think Exeter started slow last season. I think they won 2 of the first 7 or something like that. So it's a bit of a worrying trend, but obviously they've recovered somewhat and crept towards the plus one end last season. I think it was always going to be hard for them to make a tough start given the players they lost. Obviously Bowman left and Joel Randall as well, and obviously Randall Williams left in the summer. So big chance for them to mark a bit of a statement of intent this weekend and get back to winning ways, and that should hopefully give them a bit more confidence if they manage to do so.
As we mentioned, Billy, obviously Forest Green lost last time out in the league. It was first defeat of the season for them. What are you expecting from them in terms of response this weekend?
I expect a quick response. I think what we've seen recently with Forest Green is that they are a team that will be competing in amongst the playoffs, in amongst the automatic promotion places. So again, similar to Bradford, I see that performance against Port Vale as more of a blip. They've been scoring for fun as well before that. I think they've scored 13 goals already this season. They've had the 6-3 in that, and they're still unbeaten away from home, which is a brilliant sort of thing to pick up on, a brilliant stat to try and keep going for the rest of the campaign. Matthew Stevens as well and Nicky Cadden, they're 2 players that have just been finding the back of the net for fun. And it's a young and exciting squad at Forest Green. And whilst it's all about continuing winning games and pushing themselves towards those promotion places, it's also a sustainable squad that could be built into League One should that come at the end of the season.
Okay, I'm going to go for a draw in this one. I think it could be 1-1. Billy, how do you see this one going?
I think it'll be a 1-0 Forest Green.
Okay. And George, what's your prediction?
Well, I went with goals again, as we talked about on the betting show. I think I went with a both teams scoring both halves, so I've got to say at least 2-0. I'll go 2-0. 2-2, sorry, not 2. 2, not 2.
Okay, brilliant. Yeah, we'll see if your betting tips come right this week. All right, let's move away from that game. Let's move to Mansfield against Harrogate. It's 7th v 2nd when Mansfield take on Harrogate this weekend. Harrogate being in second place, I was a little bit shocked by some of the bookies having Harrogate as long as 3-1 and Mansfield odds on, given the start the 2 teams have had this season in League 2. George, obviously Harrogate have had a really positive start to their campaign. It's their second year in the 4th tier. From what you've seen so far, do you think they've got enough to potentially maintain it and keep it going for the rest of the season? Obviously, it's early days.
Yeah, I mean, they're very fearless. And I know, obviously, they've spent 2 years in this league now, and last year was all about consolidating. But, with respect to them, they'll feel like they're punching above their weight a bit in the Football League. Only just come from the National League after beating Notts in the final. I really like what they've done recruitment-wise. They seem to have got a really good blend of experience and youth, and they've signed players from the National League, Armstrong and Horsey from Hartlepool and Maidenhead, who are two young, good players. Armstrong started the season really well. But they've also got people like Rory McArdle there, who's a good, experienced player. So obviously it's a long season. They've got to be consistent. I think in League Two, it's about over consistent because you saw how competitive it was last year. So they've got a decent blend there, a good squad morale. So who knows? I think I'm confident they'll be up there in top half at least.
Yeah, I think that's a fair assessment. As for Mansfield, Billy, as I mentioned, they are odds on with some bookmakers for this game. But having looked at how they've started this campaign, do you think that's a fair assessment of this particular match at least?
No, I still think it's quite short odds for Mansfield. I think that's not a true reflection of this game. Obviously, Mansfield are a team that are usually fancied to do quite well at the start of campaigns, but they come into this game without a win in 3. And Harrogate definitely have confidence. They've played some tough games already, and they're still unbeaten on 10 points from 4 games. So I'm quite confused as to why Harrogate are so high for this game. But yeah, if I was part of the betting show earlier, I think I know where I put my money.
Okay, with that in mind then, Billy, what's your score prediction for this particular game?
I think Harrogate again. I think they can continue in their unbeaten start. 3-1 Harrogate.
Okay, that's a confident prediction. I'm going to go with another draw, I think, actually, here. I'm going to go 1-1 between the two. George, how do you see it panning out?
Again, I said goals earlier, so I'll go 2-2. I don't think Nigel Clough's overly impressed by his defenders at the minute. So, but they also score goals. So yeah, 2-2, I think.
Okay, we'll see what happens there. And one final game to preview in League Two. And it's Newport County against Leyton Orient. Newport are 15th in League Two, but they do have a game in hand on most around them and above them. Orient are 6th, obviously, after that fine win over Bradford last weekend. George, it's obviously very early stages in the season. As I mentioned there, if Newport do get a win here and obviously win their game in hand, which still needs to be sorted out, they're going to be right back in the playoff mix. So I don't think they'll be too worried just yet, will they, with the fact that they're in the lower half of the table?
No, I don't think so. Obviously, they had a bit of a disruptive start to the season. Obviously, had that game in hand. I think Orient or another team will be up there. So, as I said about the Exeter Forest Green game, if you can beat them teams expect to be around you, then points at the end of the season can be invaluable. I think Michael Flynn does an excellent job at Newport every year. Always seem to be there or thereabouts, with the exception of last season. But the season before that. But I think it'll be a tough game this weekend. I think Orient will be buoyed on after the win against Bradford. So yeah, it'll be a tough game. But I think, if they win, it could do wonders for confidence.
As for Orient, Billy, obviously, as we mentioned, a good win over Bradford. They're well in that playoff picture at this early stage. Is that something you can see them maintaining? And if they can get a win against a Newport County team that have obviously been there or thereabouts in plenty of previous years in League Two in terms of the playoff race, that's surely a bit of a marker, really, that Orient will be putting down with victory. Yeah,
definitely. I've been talking quite a lot about Leyton Orient on the London show, how impressed I've been with them, and I can see this continuing into the season. I don't think it's just an early start of form. I think this is going to be sustained during sort of mid stages of the season and then carried on even further. So Leyton Orient in this particular game, they've been sort of hampered by injuries, and they've got the Cypriot pair also missing because they're away with Cyprus under 21s. So it's going to be a tough game for them, considering that they're going to have to make a couple of changes. Dan Happ last week as well pulled out quite early on, so it's a little bit. It's difficult to judge if they can bring these sort of fringe players in and continue to maintain those high levels of performance. But at the end of the day, I think they're a brilliant League Two outfit, and I think big things are coming from them this season.
Okay. Billy, what's your prediction for this one?
I'm going to go 2-1 Leyton Orient.
All right, George.
1-1, I think.
Oh no, okay. I'm going to go completely different. I'm going to go 2-1 Newport. So there we are. One of us has got to be right, at least for this one. So that's a good way to end. Right, just before we wrap up, we're going to get to where our writers are this weekend. And I say writers, but it's actually only just one of our writers are out and about this weekend, and it's you, Billy. You're off to a League Two game, Stevenage against Swindon. Looking forward to that one?
Yeah, definitely looking forward to it. Be my second trip to the Lamex in a week. I went there on Tuesday night for their EFL Trophy game against Spurs under-21s and made a few changes for that. But there's definitely a lot to be excited for at the moment for Stevenage. I think their forward options are very exciting. James Daly scored a brilliant goal on Tuesday night, and bags of energy, bags of pace, and it's a really exciting option to have at the moment for them. Swindon as well, they're very exciting. They've lost, obviously, Scott Twine, who was very influential for them, made a lot of things happen, but they've reacted really well and they've made a decent start to the new campaign.
Yeah, how do you see this one going? Obviously, don't want you to get in trouble once you get down there and perhaps predict against them, but how do you see this one going?
I'm not just saying this to play safe, but I do see a 1-1. I can see both teams putting a good performance in.
Okay, yeah, in fairness, I can see a draw as well. I'm going to go 2-2. George?
Yeah, I can see a draw as well. Two good attacking teams, so I'll go over 2-2 as well.
All right, brilliant. Well, that wraps up the weekend preview for this week. Obviously, no championship games, but some League One action and plenty of League Two football as well to get stuck into. So hopefully you enjoy the action that's on this weekend and enjoy what else you're getting up to this weekend as well. Hopefully we're going to have a bit more sunny weather before the summer ends, but we won't hold our breath. Thanks for joining us, and we'll speak to you next week.